Welcome back, everybody. I don't know exactly what happened to my clips today, but a lot of the video clips for some reason have no audio. I'm going to blame the microphone, or maybe the plug-in for the microphone, or something related to the microphone, because that's usually what the issue is, but nonetheless, we're here today with this 1969 pale blue Fastback. This is a beautiful little car of which we were trying to replace the carburetors on last week. We did get as far as removing the fuel injection system, and now we're ready to install the brand new CB Performance carburetors that we received to eliminate the China stuff that we had gotten out from another company. We've since sent that back. These new parts should solve the problem, and from here, well, I guess licky, likey, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to plug that dingle bell so you get updates every time I upload a video. Check out DuckShit.net for all my links, and we'll see you guys right after that intro. Here's our CB Performance Weber kit. These are Weber ICT 34 carburetors. A lot of these parts are surprising me because they are made in USA, and it says so stamped right on them. You probably see that a little closer up in this video if you don't already see it right there. But anyway, all these parts I need to be put together. Some of the linkages I already started to put together. There's hundreds of little nuts and bolts and washers and clips and this and that and all this little ropes and dongs, and you need to get them all assembled correctly. Otherwise, well, you won't be able to get these things put together correctly. This is the vacuum bung that's on the side of these carburetors. The other kit did not have that. These are critical because they need to be connected to the transmission. Now, it's not required for the shifting of this automatic transmission, but it does soften the shift quite a bit. And if you don't have it in place, well, it'll bang into the next gear instead, and well, that's not a really, really good driving feeling when the thing is just, slamming between gears. But anyway, that's what the vacuum servo does. There's your USA! Look at that! Much better than the other China set that we had before. These carburetor intake manifolds are quite thick in metal, unlike the other set that we had, which was very thin. But you see, on the ends here, I always have to file them down because they're never square. Sometimes the studs aren't even long enough to get the nuts on, so I have to do quite a bit of filing there to get it a nice little spot for the nut to sit and enough room to get the tool on the nut. And that's rather critical. But otherwise, this set is really, really awesome. I've been pleased with these. I installed them, as you probably have seen, I think, 5, maybe even 6 times, including this one in this past year. These are just, they're awesome. This is the only carburetor kit I would recommend that you should get for your Volkswagen, whether it be a Type 3, a Beetle, or even a bus running a 1600 set. In fact, I even installed this a set on a bay window 1700 with a Type 4 engine, and that came out good also. Otherwise, the jetting and stuff that you see inside of here, pretty much they work really good off the shelf for most stock 1600 engines. I have experienced one that the compression ratio, it's what I believe it was, because the engine would get hot and would ping unnecessarily with regular gas in it and seemed to be resolved with higher octane. But the jetting in there was pretty good for the most part for stock 1600. That one I had to up it a few sizes, so there's really not much I would recommend that you would change on these for a stock 1600, unless you really want to dig into carburetor tuning. But this set should do the trick. There's little linkage arms. Look at all those nuts and bolts in there. There's still so much I had to put together. And there's even more on the card that I haven't even busted off of yet. So this needs to be installed. And by the way, if you want to know what the audio sounds like from the camera, here's a little sample. Yeah, pretty awful, isn't it? These little throttle linkage pieces here that you see, that little, what's that shape? I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't allowing throttle butterfly to close all the way. It would cause a little binding. So the way to resolve that seems to be to hold the carburetor open and tighten the nut down. And if that doesn't work, then tighten the nut down on the end and then loosen those little butterfly screws that you see there. Once you get them loosened, snap the carburetor closed. Just let it slap shut and then tighten up the nuts. And that seems to solve the problem on these things. And I've experienced that a lot, but one of these two carburetors was really, really bad. I don't know what made it so different, but simply loosening those butterfly screws, as I said, and retightening them was enough to get the butterfly in there aligned properly. But anyway, that solved the issue on this one. This one carburetor, as I said, was really bad, whereas the ones that I had on the other cars that were here this past, even the past month, I had 2 other cars with the same carburetors. They had the issue too, but like I said, it wasn't as bad. I was just able to snug up the nut and it did the trick. But this one, yep, I attacked those butterfly screws. So if you experience that and you're having problems with these carburetors binding up, that's what you do. Loosen those 2 screws. But when you retighten them, make sure you tighten them down adequately, because if they should come loose, your engine will swallow them. And I can't say they're going to be flying out your exhaust. They might actually end up pinging the inside of your engine up, banging up the inside of your your piston, your head, it'll smash your valves. I mean, it'll just make a mess out of everything. And if you've ever seen what it looks like inside of an engine after a screw or nut is in there, it's quite a mess. So put a little Loctite on them if you can. Also, a little Teflon tape will sometimes do the trick. I wouldn't recommend welding them or something, crazier like that. But yeah, that'll do the trick. So once you get them snugged up, you're able to put these carburetors back on. So that solved that issue. What did we have next on this one? I really don't remember. I'm waiting for the video to proceed because I'm just narrating as it goes along. And we got about another minute and a half of this one left. Now, let's see. Choppy, choppy, choppy. I'm waving my hand around. I'm having fun with this one. And I'm using way too much verbal noise and talking, way more than I usually do. But I'm enjoying this, so I hope you guys are too. Play-by-play narration. There it is. Anyway, this carburetor also had the same issue, like I said, but the one was just really, really bad. Anyway, I've got, for the most part, the intake manifolds assembled here, and what we're going to do is we're going to put the intake manifolds on this engine. I'm going to bolt them down tight, then I'm going to pack the intake manifolds with some paper, wrap some plastic grocery store bags around them, and we're going to start cleaning this engine up. This engine is just filthy. I mean, it is just filthy. It's covered in dirt, leaves, old paint, and here I'm about to show it to you. I mean, it's just, it's real scruffy. This engine lid didn't want to hang properly. I was having a little I remember that. It didn't want to hang up. So I fought with it a little bit, and then finally it went in there. And look, there's my impacts. Oh, and they're gone. Anyway, the top of that engine you see is just, it's filthy. Not so much greasy, but it's just very dirty. It's all dirt that you see. Just heavy amounts of dirt, chipped paint, and like leaves and other, yard debris kind of stuff. So we'll be cleaning that out. But again, these intake manifolds need to go on first. They need to be covered, bagged, and the whole works. And that should solve the problem. And I guess the next step is, well, get those manifolds on and let's start cleaning that engine. Alright, here we are with our manifolds installed and bagged over. I actually had no trouble reaching the nuts on the sides of these, and I was rather surprised. Usually I have a lot more of a fight. I guess I filed off a little more than I usually do. I did install the spark plug wires as well, just to make sure that the water didn't get down through the distributor cap and into the distributor, so everything is nice and booted up. For whatever it's worth, I also stuck the two spark plugs that are furthest from me, the front ones, because they're a little harder to get installed once you start putting the carburetors on. And I probably jumped the gun because I don't need them on there before I wash the engine, but they're there already anyway, so we're just gonna go with it. Yes, sir. Alright, look at that mess of all this paint and stuff I was telling you about, so it's quite ugly. Let's go ahead and get it in here at the hose and some soap and start cleaning this sucker out. Well, would you look at this. This is what the engine would have looked like about 6 weeks ago had it been sitting out in the weather. Man, did it sure snow a lot. And this, so there's the car that was covered in snow. This car was or this engine rather, would have been probably covered in way more snow than that. You wouldn't have even seen the engine because we got something like 9.5 inches by the time the day was done. It was just a tremendous amount of snow. But anyway, there it is, rinsed off and clean. All the soap is gone. We're just going to let this dry for a little bit out here in the sunlight. It seems to be a nice day today, right around 65 degrees with low humidity. We're not in direct sun, but this is going to dry up pretty fast. But look at how much better it looks already. Check that out. I mean, I am just over-impressed that the detergent did so well, and that scrubbing the brush took off so much of that loose paint that was stuck to the engine case. Now, the owner said he's going to paint his own, so we're going to let him do that. But from here out, let's see. We got no audio in this clip either, so we're going to talk about it a little more. It looks like I got the carburetor partially installed, and I got the linkage begun on that side. There's a reverse thread that's on the lower portion of it there, and that's what I'm demonstrating. Now, that reverse thread is opposite of the other positive thread that's above it. And that allows you to, essentially, it's a turnbuckle, allows you to lengthen or shorten the linkage that's on there. We're going to put the other linkage on the other side, but we're going to do it the same way with the reverse thread pointing down, so that way the threads and nuts and bolts all turn in the same direction, so there's no confusion when it comes to balancing these carburetors out. But this arm does use a longer link because cylinders 3 and 4 are further forward of cylinders 1 and 2, so that's why it has that long black arm that you see there on it. And then, of course, it uses the same turnbuckle style rod on there with the reverse thread on the bottom of it. Let's see, what else we got in here? I'm waiting for my video to advance. Look, we got a fuel line on with the T, and we're going to attach it to the existing line right there. The existing lines are actually in pretty good shape, so there's no reason to change those out. Here's our bar. There's the springs that go in the ends of it. Some people tell me, pack them with grease. I say, that's probably a bad idea, because they're still going to fall out anyway. So what I do is I stretch the spring a little bit like that. And once you shove it on into that bar, and I think I had trouble doing it with one hand, we're going to see in just a second. So we're going to have a moment to laugh at me. Here we go. Watch this. Come on, Duckman, you clumsy guy. And this is the little, I had a little stud that this thing slides over. This is fun. I've never narrated my own videos before. Anyway, because the string is stretched, it's going to have a friction fit on the inside of there. Look at me, doing, doing, doing. It ain't going anywhere. It ain't coming out of there. Because when you pack them with grease, the only thing it does is still fall out but make a mess. So I don't do anything but grease the little balls on the ends of them. There's no reason to grease the springs, because like I said, they are not going to stay in there. That doesn't make any sense. So don't bother with that. Stretch your springs. Make them work. Alright, moving forward. What else we got here? Come on, video. It just stopped for some reason. There it is, playing again. Alright, going. Let's see, we got this in here. I'm still talking about this rod. You can't put the rod in until, of course, the air cleaners are on there. Here's the other fuel line it's going to go into. I like mounting as much stuff on these carburetors as you can before you put them in the engine bay, because once it's in the engine bay, this stuff is hard to reach. And sometimes if you had trouble making fitment, like those hex joints sometimes have trouble slipping over the hex bar. And if you have that issue, it's usually because of some casting slag. So it takes a little force, and if it's in the engine compartment already installed, well, it's a pain in the ass. So do that outside. There's 3 holes in these air cleaners, and there's also 3 screws on the top of the carburetor that coincide with them. We got to take those carburetor screws out. In the kit is some extensions, some standoffs, or I should say extended screws and some standoffs. And what you're going to do is, well, you're going to take them out of the can first off that I have right here. And we're going to show them to everybody. There's one of the longer screws. No, it's not. It's a straw, and I have no idea where it came from. Man, I flung it. So this is one of those longer screws that I was talking about. These will go right through the top of the carburetor air cleaner like this, and then underneath on the bottom of it, we're going to put the spacer. It sits right there just like so, and that allows you to tighten down those nuts and bolts and screws and hold the air cleaner on there. Stops it from twisting or moving. Stops the hex joint, or hex bar rather, from shifting left to right as these things spin. Well, with 3 screws in it, they're captive and they don't go anywhere. Alright, well, hex bar, blah, blah, blah. Look at me, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, look at that, an impact. Oh, you know, I actually didn't even use that in this video. I had it set up in case I needed it, and then it occurred to me while I was recording. It completely wasn't necessary at all, so I didn't even get to mock myself very much. But anyway, we're going to pull the screws out of this thing so we don't lose it. We're going to get everything set up and ready to go. And we're going to start jamming the other carburetor into place here, get the nuts tightened on it, and then we're going to start installing our air cleaners. Now, here we go. The right side, or left side rather, is installed. And you do the same thing on the opposite side, on the right side, again with those standoffs. I wasn't sure if I demonstrated that in the previous clip well enough, so I'm showing again. For whatever reason, I decided to do it again. So anyway, that's how it gets installed on that side, and that's what it looks like. We're going to do the same thing over on this side. And you can't put the hex bar in until these air cleaners are just about ready to go, and that's about when I was getting harassed by a screaming rooster, so I kicked the 4x4 at him. He was being really obnoxious, which is good. I guess the audio clip wasn't working out, but he was like right next to me screaming. He just wanted my attention. That's the same boy, by the way, that likes to inspect my work when I'm working. He jumps in the engine compartment and like, look at what I'm doing. He's the only bird that I've ever had that actually joins me in the engine compartment and checks things out. Anyway, moving on to the next video clip we got here. I started lining up the hex bar linkage. Now, as I said, you can't install these until the air cleaners go on. These are the little the little black dicks that go on the end. And they have a little head on the end of them, and that's what the hex bar is going to slide over the top of that. We got to wind them in as tightly as possible because we need as much clearance as possible when we start putting in the hex bar. And this is where I noticed something. This hex bar is cut about ½ an inch shorter than they usually are. So what I discovered here is that I can actually tighten down the air cleaner and get it fully assembled, and then just simply slide the hex bar into place between the 2 little black dicks, and then unwind them to tighten it back up so that way everything winds up in place. Normally I can't do that. Normally I have to put the air cleaner on with the hex bar linkage already installed on it, and then find myself fighting with the screws to get everything lined up to be able to get it assembled properly. So it can turn into quite a fight, and you end up dropping all the spacers and bolts down into the engine. And I don't mean like down in the intake manifold. I mean like, you know, down in the outside of the engine, down in the cooling tins and things where they disappear and you can't find them. Thankfully, every time I dropped them on this car as I was assembling it, they all fell out the bottom and were able to be retrieved with just simply a magnet from under the car. So, not a big deal this time
we got
around.
the linkage in there, and I was going to do that on camera, but
Anyway, I got so angry and I was moving around so much over here that I knocked over the tripod twice, and I hadn't even started recording yet, just making sure that everything fit the way I wanted it to. And yeah, that's right, sometimes I rehearse things before I record them. Anyway, I said that's enough. Jam the thing in, and I jammed it in, and sure enough, I got it in there. But I just kept having problems with things falling down. I had this problems with the springs. I was knocking them out. They weren't falling out. I kept knocking them out, which caused me to have to chase them. And anyway, it's in. And when I push on it, I notice that that linkage on that side is moving, and that side's not. So that means that we are out of sync. So we'll just play with it a little until both sides move somewhat equally. There it goes. That's still a little out. There we go. You guys can't hear it in stereo, but I can. But both of them are moving together. So what I can do now is I can lock these nuts down, and I'm just finger tight, because I'm going to come back and hit them with a wrench later, because we're going to put the vacuum gauge on this thing and balance everything out. So this thing should be, yeah, at this point it should be ready to run. I got to put our spark plug wires back in, of course. So they need to go back in. I need to put them in the correct order. Since I pulled them out of the cab blindly without paying attention to it, I'm not sure where they belong, but that's not a big deal to sort out. And make sure that the fuel pump comes on when I turn the key. If it does, we got gas, and this thing will start. So let me figure out that stuff. All right, here's our ignition switch turning on. And I don't hear the fuel pump running up underneath the front of the car. I'm going to have to figure out why. I'm trying to wire it into the stock wiring, but there's a possibility that now, because most of the fuel injection system is gone, it may be turned on and off by the fuel injection system. I don't know for certain. Not my area expertise. I don't really work with those fuel injection systems too much. But there's the fuel pump. I put it in the same place on Ruby. It makes it nice and easy to get to, and you can see the stock wiring harness plugged in there on the left-hand side. So that's why it's in there the way it is. But I need to figure out why we got no juice there. And if I can't get juice there, we need to run wire there a different way. And sometimes I connect it directly to the horn. It says fog lights. We don't want to do on that, because that will only come on when you turn the fog lights on, which he doesn't even have any. So his horn is underneath the bumper here, which is generally where they don't go. On a Type 3, believe it or not, they're installed in the trunk. Inside the car, you close the lid on them. I don't know if they made it different in 69, but actually I mounted mine there in the same spot also. I'm just going to snake the wires right on through. But I'm going to check for a hot wire here. If we have a hot wire there, I'm going to route it back to the fuel pump. It's already got a ground on it. That should get it to go on as soon as we turn the key. As long as the horn works. I don't even know. Does the horn even work in this car? Might as well check that. It's not dependent on the button functioning, but it is dependent on the horn getting juice. Yeah, it works. So there is power down there. So we might just tap off of that one, like I said. Okay, well, now we know where we are. Let's get that sorted out, get some fuel to the back, and this thing should crank up. Well, first it started raining, and then it got dark. So I guess that's it. See you guys on the next one.